Good morning, Wall Street winners. It is the last trading day of 2024. It is December 31st, and as we head into the morning session, we can see that all three U.S. indices are in the green, which is great. Looks like we're going to have a positive start to the last trading day of 2024. It should be a fairly muted session. I mean, most institutional traders are probably off today. It's going to be primarily a small mix of institutional and retail bank traders, and then the retail trading population. We are seeing a bit of a comeback on the NASDAQ. We're seeing a turnaround in oil, which is interesting, and the narrative changing in oil this morning. So oil up only 4 cents, but up in the $71 range for crude futures into February the 25th. They were up a lot higher, almost at $72 earlier today. They've just come off that high. But the narrative is shifting around the power requirements for U.S. data centers and how they may start to leverage oil and natural gas to power some of these. So that's not been part of the conversation. It's a pretty odd conversation overall, but that is where it's turned to. And typically when a narrative changes, it means that interest in a certain sector is changing and they're trying to find a reason to justify that change. So it'll be interesting to see what happens to oil going into January. I've been predicting, making an estimation or a guess for quite a while that oil is going to start to turn and had bottomed and should be up probably 8 to 10% come the end of January. So we'll see whether that prediction holds true. But as we rule through what we're looking at in the Yahoo Finance app and health and retail, it's mostly green on the screen, although we've had a few pretty rough days to kind of close out the 2024 year. I'm not that interested in anything in health and retail or transport at this point, although I do like, as a long-term buy, I do like CNR down at the under 145. I think that stock's going to pop up today and into the new year. Obviously, anything we do today is kind of immaterial because if you buy and sell today, it counts for 2025. So based on when that stock trade actually closes, which will be in the new year with a one-day trade close deadline. Oil is up. Most oil companies are in the green in the morning session here pre-market. We've got crude. Oh, it's just gone negative. It's down 3 cents. So we'll see whether that gets back up above 71 and stays there. And if it doesn't, I'd expect that some of the green we're seeing on the screen is going to turn to red, but we'll have to wait and see how that plays out. NVIDIA was one of the few tech companies yesterday that was in the green. Looks like it's in the green again today. Most of the others are in the green. I mean, you're seeing a lot of red on the screen, but we're looking at the pre-market green numbers here. So this may be an interesting opportunity to get in, if you didn't yesterday, towards the end of the session when there were some great deals to be had. It might be interesting to get in the pre-market if you can, and then see if this continues upwards. I'm pretty confident that going into the first couple of days, Thursday and Friday of this year, the first two trading days, that we're going to see some pretty healthy expansion in the overall markets. So I've been looking at Meta lately in the 580s, 590s, thinking that's a pretty attractive price point. I think that's a $650 stock within, I'm going to say, the next 40 days, and that's calendar days, not trading days. So it's going to announce, I think it's early February. It's going to late January, early February. So by the time it announces or at announcement, I think we're going to see this stock after announcement up to 650. So I think that's got a nice 10% gain in it to be made there because they're generating a tremendous amount of cash. Their revenues and earnings should be quite positive and solid, and their investments in AI should start to be paying. It should start to show that they're starting to pay off. Even Microsoft recently has augmented their financials that they released to include a line item for AI revenue, and that's been obviously a significant growth area for Microsoft and other, call it data center cloud platform providers. Scrolling down, we've also been buying some Google lately in the low 190s. I think that's a steal. I think that's going to see some traction today. Probably a $210 to $220 stock. Just waiting on January 20th to come and the Trump administration actually taking power. I think shortly after that, we're going to hear that these antitrust lawsuits and cases are going to be dropped by the Department of Justice. And when we hear that, I think there's going to be a significant gain in a stock like Google, who has an antitrust case on the separation of its Chrome browser from its main business or core business. Scrolling down further, Adobe has been clobbered this year in the 440s. I think it's still fairly attractive. I'm holding it from like the 590s, so I'm way underwater in Adobe. In fact, I sold some Adobe going into this week because I wanted to take a bit of a tax loss on that and reduce my capital gains for the year. So I offloaded some of that. I'll probably look to pick some of it back up in 30 to 45 days once I get past that 30-day window where I can't buy for tax reasons. And then we get down into financials. I've been buying some SoFi lately. I think it's attractive in the $15 range. And these will be the first to report with JP Morgan coming out mid-January. Also loving Goldman if I liked it in the 580s, it's down in the 570s. I don't think you're going to go too far wrong with Goldman in the 570s and everything again coming down the pike with the change in administration in the US. So that's where we are today. I hope you've had a great year in the markets. The markets overall have done extremely well. I think it's an interesting time, though, and one to just be a little cautious because we are always going to see corrections. Actually, there's one thing I wanted to point out to you this morning, and that was just taking a look at the QQQ. So this is the Invesco QQQ, and if you take a look at the last year, from January through to, we'll call it end of March, we had a pretty good run up in the QQQ value, starting down at 402, was up to 440. So that's a nice 10% gain. But then after April and into May, there was a sell-off. So again, we talk about the markets being a bit of a roller coaster and taking your profits. So when you're up 10% and you're in 3 months to the year, not a bad time to sell and just wait for things to come down. And if you had have done that, you may not have timed it perfectly, but maybe you got in back in the 420s. Maybe you got in, you were lucky in the 418 or 414 range. But even if you got if you sold it at 440 and got back in at 435 and caught it back on the upswing, you could have ridden that from 435 to 490 and made another 10%, at least, probably a little more than 10% there, and then sold it again and took your profits. And then you could have waited and bought it back down in the 440 range and then rode it back up to 480, maybe not as high as 480. Maybe you bought it at 450 or 460 and sold it at 470 or 480, still taking a gain, and then waited again. And you're looking at waiting like 30 days, sometimes less than 30 days. So usually within a month, it will come down. Now, this isn't always true, but I mean, following the charts and looking at the different signals and waiting for it to start to take off. So you don't have to buy it as it's going down. You can wait till it actually starts to come back, or you believe it started to come back. And then you could have ridden it the rest of the way up and gone from somewhere in the 460 range all the way up to the 530s. So although you would have done well just buying and holding the Invesco QQQ and making 25.91% in the year, you could have also done even better than that by simply buying, staying in cash, waiting for it to come off its highs, and then buying back again. Now, there is the chance that it just continues to go up on a straight line, but the likelihood of that is super small. So take your profits. I hope you've taken some profits this year. I hope you've put your money to work and your money's been able to make you some money so that you have to work less and your money can work more. And that's what these videos are all about. So I'm going to be continuing this into 2025. I'll have a video per trading day. I'll try to produce a few more shorts for you to have a look at. But if there are things you'd like me to talk about, I'd be happy to do that. Just leave me a comment. Hope you've had a great year. Happy New Year, and we'll talk to you again on January 2nd.